Hello, my friends. This is Dominic. Hope everyone had a wonderful day, locked up in their house, doing what they do, becoming recluses, becoming hermits. Today I wanted to talk about death, the fear of death, the beauty of death, the terror of death, and man's plight that the other animals are spared of, that only we have to endure. And it goes back to the story of the Garden of Eden, seeing that as a metaphor. There was the tree that they were not supposed to eat the fruit of, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And Yahweh was, walking around the garden, thinking to himself. And it's interesting the way it's said. He said, if they eat of the fruit of that tree, they will become as we are. As we are. And what he means by that, or what God meant by that, is before we ate that fruit, we were lacking in something very, very essential to what makes us human, and that's self-awareness. That's consciousness. The awareness of being here in this, whatever this is. I wanted to start out by reading a passage from the prophet on death, very short. And he says, we would ask now of death. And he said, you would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king, whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling, that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what is it to die, but to stand naked in the wind, and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing, but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then shall you truly dance. I mean, that's fucking beautiful, right? Plato, or was it Socrates? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Said that time is the moving image of eternity. That's what time is. And I love that passage on death. It's a great book if you haven't read it. There's every topic from love to loss, to death. Now, the fear of death comes from self-awareness. When we ate that fruit from that tree, we became self-aware. We realized we were naked and we covered ourselves. All these metaphors. After that, they were banished from the garden, and there's an angel with a flaming sword at the entrance to that garden so that we may never enter it again. To me, this signifies a loss of innocence. You can never go back once you've tasted that fruit. Once you, in a more modern sense, come online, you realize that you are and with it comes beauty and joy and the numinous. But on the other side, there's a trembling, there's a fear, because you know that you're going to die. You know that one day you will be no more. Whatever you think you are, as far as the self is concerned. And we could talk about the self some other time, but for the sake of this argument, that fear of annihilation, more of a terror, is, in my opinion, the underlying motivation for everything that we do. Everything. It's not sex, like Freud thought. So, this book, The Denial of Death, some beautiful passages I wanted to read, and I thought maybe it might be insightful to a few of you. So this is man's existential dilemma. So we always knew that there was something peculiar about man, something deep down that characterized him and set him apart from the other animals. It was something that had to go right to his core, something that made him suffer his peculiar fate, that made it impossible to escape. For ages, when philosophers talked about the core of man, they referred to it as his essence. Something fixed in his nature, deep down, some special quality or substance. But nothing like it was ever found. Man's peculiarity still remained a dilemma. The reason it was never found was that there was no essence, that the essence of man is really his paradoxical nature. This is interesting. The fact that he is half animal and half symbolic. You see, we are symbolic creatures. Language is symbolic. Jung just talked about this a lot in his book Man and His Symbols. We are half animal. We're half flesh and half angel, because we possess something that William Blake called the divine imagination, and that's what separates us from the animals. This is our burden, really. The fact that he is half animal and half symbolic. Very interesting. So this is the paradox. He is out of nature and hopelessly in it. So that is a cognitive dissonance to an extreme that I don't think anything else can compare. To know that you are in nature and out of nature at the same time. That you have this self-awareness, this imagination. You could take yourself to the farthest reaches of the universe. You could become anything in the mind. Yet You reside in this stinking, rotting body that slowly is in flux, slowly decaying. Man is literally split in two. He has an awareness of his own splendid uniqueness, and that he sticks out of nature with a towering majesty, and yet he goes back into the ground a few feet in order blindly and dumbly to rot and disappear forever. It is a terrifying dilemma to be in and to have to live with. And it really is. I mean, it's almost, I'm not sure if you've heard this phrase, if man can't live forever, what's the point of being alive? Some people feel that way. Fortunately, it's the fact that we do die that makes life so beautiful. As Shakespeare said, that a rose is so beautiful because we know it's going to die. We know it's so ephemeral, and that's the case with everything. Go back and look at all of your school pictures growing up every year, and you tell me where you are. Who are those people in those pictures? Is there something permanent in you that is unchanging? And if so, where is it? Because I've been looking for it for 40 years. And not being able to find it, I've come to the conclusion that through the insight of just being mindful and meditation, psychedelics have helped with this. But realizing that man is a process. Everything is a process. There is no stable soul. There is no unchanging essence, as they were just talking about. So the knowledge of death is reflective and conceptual, and the animals are spared of it. They live and they disappear with the same thoughtlessness. A few minutes of fear, a few seconds of anguish, and it's over. Thinking of an animal in a herd, all of a sudden a lion flies out of the bush. Fear instills in that animal. It's quickly caught and eaten. Before that, the animal is living in ignorance. But for man to live a whole lifetime with the fate of death's hauntings one's dreams, and even the most sun-filled days, now that's something else. Because even in the most sun-filled days, personally, in my opinion, I believe there is that fear and trembling underneath everything. It is that existential anxiety. Was it Kierkegaard that said that we were thrown into the world? I like that phrase, being thrown in, because it's like we didn't ask to be here. We didn't ask for this. We were thrown into it. And as beautiful as it is, and as numinous as every moment is, the more you think about it, the more you reflect on it, the more you realize no one knows what this is. No one knows what this is. Religions claim to know this or that, ancient knowledge. I love that. We're a young primate species. We've only been around a few 100,000 years, and that's at the best, at the most. Homo sapiens sapiens. So we're a young primate species. We still live in infancy. And this knowledge of death, this awareness, this terror underlies everything. And I've talked to many people that disagree with me and say that, oh, I don't think about that. I don't think about death. Of course you don't think about it all the time. Most people don't. But most psychoanalysts, Freud, Jung, came up with these defense mechanisms or discovered them and showed how we use different energies to repress, to sublimate, to transmute, to deny that fear. And so that existential anxiety gets converted, gets, the word is sublimated, gets put into other things. This is what society is. This is what civilization is. This is what everything is built because of. It's born through this fear of death. It's born from this anxiety. It's very interesting to me. I think that's all I want to talk about today. I wanted to just get a general introduction into death, into the fear of death, and I wanted to get your guys' opinions about it. That's just the beginning. I have a huge section I want to get into next time that gets into the terror of death and that gets into the concept of personality. There's a chapter in this book called Human Character as a Vital Lie, which I think is one of the best names for a chapter that I've ever heard. And it talks about how the personality, even the personalities, it's a construct, it's a costume, it's a social mask that we wear in order to feel comforted, in order to deny what we really are. There's a great quote also that even a king on the highest throne still sits on a pile of his own stinking shit. And I'll leave you with that. Thanks, everybody. Love you all. See you tomorrow.